Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about Henry II and Thomas Becket, the king and archbishop, and the murder of him that shook England. So, it's a cold December evening in 1170. Inside Canterbury Cathedral, four knights, armed and grim, storm toward the altar. Their target is the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, once the closest friend of King Henry II. Moments later, Becket lies dead on the floor of his own church. This shocking murder would send ripples across Europe, stain Henry II's reign, and turn Becket into a saint and a martyr. But to understand how England reached this moment, we need to step back and meet the man who sat on the throne, Henry II, the first and perhaps greatest of the Plantagenet kings. Henry II came to the throne in 1154 after nearly 2 decades of civil war under King Stephen. His claim was strong. He was the son of Empress Matilda, granddaughter of William the Conqueror. But more importantly, Henry was no ordinary king of England. By inheritance and marriage, Henry ruled an empire stretching from Scotland's border all the way down to the Pyrenees. He controlled Normandy, Anjou, Aquitaine, and much more. In fact, he was wealthier and more powerful than the King of France, who was technically his overlord for these lands. Henry was a restless, energetic ruler, riding constantly across his dominions. He valued efficiency, reform, and power, and like many medieval kings, he expected the church to serve him. In 1155, Henry appointed his trusted ally, Thomas Becket, as Chancellor of England. Becket was brilliant, witty, and worldly. He dressed in fine clothes, threw lavish parties, and supported the king in strengthening royal authority. So in 1162, when the position of Archbishop of Canterbury, the highest church office in England, became vacant, Henry saw the perfect solution. He placed Becket in the role, expecting him to be a loyal servant of the crown. But Henry had miscalculated. The moment Becket took the position, he transformed. He gave up his riches, adopted an ascetic lifestyle, and committed himself fully to the independence of the church. What Henry thought would be his greatest political triumph quickly turned into his greatest frustration. The breaking point came over a problem that angered many kings: criminous clerks, churchmen who committed crimes. Under church law, they could only be tried in courts, which rarely handed out harsh punishments. Henry demanded that such offenders be handed over to royal courts for proper justice. At a council in Clarendon in 1164, Henry set out his position in a document called the Constitutional Clarendon. He expected the bishops, including Becket, to accept his terms. Becket resisted, gave in briefly, then repented. The conflict escalated until Becket fled into exile in France. For 6 years, negotiations dragged on. Henry focused on his empire and his wars, while Becket rallied support from the Pope and other church leaders. By 1170, Henry wanted to secure the coronation of his son, the young Henry, as co-king. Traditionally, this was the Archbishop of Canterbury's duty, but Becket was still in exile. Henry allowed another archbishop to perform the coronation, a direct insult to Becket's authority. Enraged, Becket returned to England, determined to reassert his power. He began excommunicating bishops who had defied him. Word reached Henry, who, in a moment of fury, is said to have cried out, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" 4 knights took these words literally. They crossed the channel, confronted Becket in Canterbury, and on 29 December 1170, they murdered him at the altar. The murder of an archbishop in his own cathedral horrified Christendom. Almost overnight, Becket was hailed as a martyr. Miracles were reported at his tomb, and by 1173 the Pope canonized him as Saint Thomas Becket. For Henry, the consequences were dire. Though he denied ordering the killing, the shadows of guilt hung over him. In 1174, in an extraordinary act of penance, Henry walked barefoot through the streets of Canterbury while monks flogged him. Yet, ironically, once the storm passed, Henry emerged politically stronger. Becket was gone, the church in England was quieter, and Henry continued to expand and reform royal justice. But Becket's legacy lived on, a symbol of resistance to royal interference in the church. The Becket affair is the most famous episode of Henry II's reign, but it should not overshadow his achievements. Henry laid the foundations of English common law, introduced reforms in royal courts, and left behind a government more bureaucratic and professional than ever before. Still, the quarrel with Becket shows the tension at the heart of the medieval world, the battle between king and church, between secular authority and spiritual authority. And in England at least, that battle reached its most dramatic expression in the blood of an archbishop on a cathedral floor. So when we look back at Henry II and Thomas Becket, we see more than just a personal quarrel between a king and his former friend. We see a turning point in the balance of power between church and state. Henry wanted control, Becket wanted independence. In the end, both achieved a kind of victory. Henry remained one of England's greatest kings, and Becket became a saint whose shrine would attract pilgrims for centuries. It's a story of friendship turned to rivalry, power turned to tragedy, and one of the most unforgettable dramas of medieval England. So, if you found the story of Henry II and Thomas Becket fascinating, imagine what else lies hidden in the lives of Plantagenet kings. Was Becket a true martyr for the church, or a stubborn politician who pushed too far? Please share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more history brought to life.